Hey y'all, I'm back. I am back with a new anime to review, but actually it's not new. It is a 90s anime. Y'all know I love my 90s. It is the 90s cult classic Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop first ran in 1998 and it ran for 27 episodes, basically like one season, and it was directed by Shinichiro Watanabe. Cowboy Bebop is about a group of bounty hunters, but they're in space and they're on a ship or a spaceship called the Bebop. They travel throughout the galaxy, chasing down bounty heads and battling crime, but throughout the show, they're also battling their own demons as well. It's really good. Cowboy Bebop falls under the category called neo-noir anime, and this is my first neo-noir anime, but it has also been classified as a shoujo. Now, neo-noir is like dark and dreary and full of shadows and secrets and tragic love stories, and it's really like a soap opera at times, which is why I can see how they would classify it as a shoujo, but it's the bomb nonetheless. So the crew on Cowboy Bebop, it consists of 4 main characters: Spike Spiegel, Jet Black, Faye Valentine, and like their little sister Edward, and their Welsh corgi named Anne. So let's jump into the show. Jet Black. Okay, Jet is the owner of the Bebop ship. Jet used to be a cop for the ISP or the ISSP, the Interstellar Police System, Interstellar System Police System, one of them. But anyway, he left after realizing how corrupt it was and that it couldn't be fixed. And then he went and bought the ship, the Bebop, and he just started picking up bounties after that. It made it sound really easy to just become a bounty hunter after that. So that's what he did. Jet is technically the oldest of the crew at 36, and he is the most mature. He looks after the ship and he looks after everybody on it. So I guess you could kind of consider him to be like the father figure. He's really gruff and rough sounding and huge, but he is a big softie. If you notice, Jet has a huge metal arm. He got set up by his former co-worker and a member of the European crime syndicate or European syndicate mafia. They were who was corrupting the ISSP. So they got in a gunfight one night after they set him up and his arm got shot off. Now, because of the technology during the time, he could have had it like regenerated, like grew back or whatever, but he chose the metal replacement instead because he wanted a reminder, I guess, of like what happened. And speaking of that, Jet, he is actually a big softie. Like I said, he's gruff looking and rough sounding, but he's got a huge heart. When he was a cop, he had a live-in girlfriend and her name was Elisa. But unbeknownst to him, she wasn't happy. He was working all the time, but like a father figure, he was controlling everything. So while he was at work, she left. She just wrote him a note and left a note and this pocket watch that he got from her. So he kept that with him for years, hoping that he would see her again. So Jet was stuck in the past. He was stuck in his past trauma, unfortunately, like everybody else on the ship. But unlike everybody else on the ship, and I'd say especially unlike Spike, he was able to work through and or detach from his issues successfully. But yeah, Jet was that guy. Spike Spiegel, he is the main bounty hunter of the Cowboy Bebop crew. So Jet gives him the assignments and the locations, and he either takes them down alone or they team up. And Spike is good with combat, he's good with gunplay, he just always seems to be up for the challenge. Now Spike, unlike Jet, I believe Jet used to be law enforcement, yeah. Spike used to be part of a crime mob called the Red Dragon Crime Syndicate. So he ended up faking his death to leave. But the reason is because he wanted to run away with another gang member's girlfriend named Julia. They were in love secretly, and she got offered freedom if she killed him, like I guess immunity or whatever, but she didn't want to do that. So the day that they were supposed to meet up together and run off, she stood him up. he'd never recovered from that. So, and you can tell, like, throughout the show, Spike is very cool. He's aloof. He's a smart ass. He gives a lot of devil may care energy. A lot of it is what it is, but he's actually very sad. Like, he's trapped in his own mind because he can't let go of Julia. So he actually doesn't care if he dies because he doesn't seem to know if he's alive. Like, he can't tell if he's even alive or not. So he's doing all this to chase a feeling. Really not unlike Faye. Faye Valentine is my favorite character in Cowboy Bebop, of course. Faye is a criminal fugitive turned bounty hunter. But just when you think that that part of her story is interesting, like, it gets even more interesting than that, because Faye is actually a 77-year-old in a 23-year-old's body. She got cryogenically frozen when she was 23. For 50 some odd years, she woke up in like 2068. So in a way, she's like lost in this new world and she's trying to find her way. And that happening to her and her not being able to remember it gave her really strong depth and framework for the show. But because she's still in a 23-year-old body, it makes her appearance satisfactory for the male viewers, of course. Faye definitely gives off like kick-ass action figure in her uniform, which is way too small. But she also gives off femme fatale, like Julia's character, when the time comes and she cleans up on her missions or whatever. I think that becoming a bounty hunter gave her the excitement that she had been searching for, but in a legal way. And she clearly cares for the Cowboy Bebop family that they've created. You can tell, especially in the way that she has like a big sister, little sister relationship with Edward. So all of that kind of builds on her story together. Like, Faye is immature, she's selfish, she's impulsive, she's basically still very childlike, but we get to see her grow up some during the show. Edward and Ann, they are the babies or the pets of the Cowboy Bebop crew. Ann is a dog, so he's a fur baby, and then Edward is a little kid and the youngest of the crew, so she's a baby. They're the kids. And I referenced them together because they were the closest out of the whole group, but they did not arrive to the Cowboy Bebop crew together. The guys found Ein in the second episode, Stray Dog Strut. They actually took him from a dog thief and they ended up keeping him. Spike claimed to not like dogs, but they kept him and they loved him. But Edward, she didn't join the crew until the 9th episode. In the 9th episode, Jamming with Edward, she actually was a wanted criminal, like Faye. But she was a criminal for hacking and crashing spaceships. She could hack into anything. She turned out to be like a computer whiz on top of being a hacker, and the crew recognized that and they knew that they could use her skills, so they ended up bringing her along with them. Unlike Revolutionary Girl Utena, there weren't any heavy supernatural or occultic themes in Cowboy Bebop. The theme was more so philosophical and it was set in a science fictional landscape. And I'd say the themes that were philosophical were Stoicism and nihilism, and the person who exemplified them the most was Spike. Nihilism is the outlook that like nothing matters in life and life doesn't even last, etc., etc., and it's kind of negative. But deep down, Spike did care and he did have virtues. He had value. Spike had a heart. So I would say that Spike was a stoic. And stoicism is more so about, going with the flow and mastering yourself, because you cannot control anything happening outside of you. And I think that's why his quote, "whatever happens, happens," blew up the way that it did, because that's a stoic outlook. So beyond philosophy, I'd say spirituality was touched on a little bit, but not so much. The episode that deals with spirituality and religion and all of that the most, I'd say, is episode 23, and it's called Scratch. And it's about a religious cult called Scratch that Faye goes undercover to crack a bounty for, and the crew ends up having to go get her. The object of the cult is to live freely by uploading your consciousness to a video game called Brain Dream. And then from Brain Dream, it goes on to a computer. The leader of the cult, Dr. Londes, he is one who is wanted for like millions and millions of wulongs because like 100 members have unalived themselves. Like, this episode is really wild, especially when we find out who Dr. Landis is. But I think what is crazier is some of the things that Dr. Landis is saying isn't wrong, but he's being manipulative. He's using the knowledge for evil, and some of it is relevant even now.
What is a physical body? The body is merely an object. It is a form of existence far too impure to store the gods within us called souls. Now you will remember. Blood-stained history, material greed, hunger, sexual desire, desire to dominate, desire for fame, humanity. From the physical body, all the desires are born, and the human ego will never disappear as long as desire remains present. Humans will continue to fight to fulfill their body's desires, and it will never end. There's no future. You must awaken.
So what Dr. Landis was saying in that clip was basically the show's dig at religious cults, spirituality, you know, the gods within our bodies, all of that, and awakening. But what he was saying was not wrong.
Television controls people by bombarding them with information until they lose their sense of reality. Now, television itself has become the new religion. Television has created a people who believe instantly in dramatic fantasies, who can be controlled by tiny dots of light.
And he wasn't wrong about television either. Like, a lot of people can be controlled by what they see, what they're hearing, and how it appeals to their egos, good or bad. It could be a driving force. Think about reality TV shows or even music videos, how it controls some people on the inside, which I'm not saying that to be a bad thing, it just is true. So this was an excellent episode and commentary on the Zen mind and awakening and the new age stuff and spirituality and religion in general. It was good. The only things that I didn't care about with Cowboy Bebop were very few. One was kind of the way the episodes ran. They were a little bit oriented more towards men, I think, with the bang bang shoot 'em up western themes. I couldn't get into it all the time. I could definitely get into the more emotional parts with dialogue and the backstories of the characters, but the present day, like them going from planet to planet and shooting up everything and the fight and stuff, sometimes I even missed the bounty that they were chasing, like the backstory for that. I definitely had to go back and watch a couple of episodes. Also, I would have liked to have watched the movie. It was on Netflix, or it was a Netflix original, but it got so many bad reviews that I just decided not to even bother. But other than that, wasn't too much I disliked about the show. Cowboy Bebop, I feel, turned into such a classic over the years. One, because the theme of it was so original, like the Wild Wild West, unregulated, but out in outer space. Like, who thinks of that? Nobody. And a bunch of movies and stuff came out using that theme after the fact. It was the first of its kind. And I also think that the ending was really sad and gritty, and it wasn't like the cliche. Like, a lot of people don't like cliches, the happy endings. I like cliches, but a lot of people don't, and I think it drew more of a crowd because of that. And on top of the ending impressing viewers, the ending was also kind of open-ended, but then it kind of wasn't. And I feel like that left a lot of interpretation and discussion for a lot of people. And, you know, people love to jawbone over a TV show. And I also liked it, and I also feel like it became a classic because none of the characters were perfect. Like, each of them struggled having to free themselves from their demons, from their past traumas and all that stuff. And on top of that, each of them were flawed. Like, each of them were either strange or an asshole or whatever, and they were very unapologetic about it. So that made it even more entertaining. I think another thing about it that made it classic was that it was very adult themed without it being inappropriate. Like, nothing about the show was inappropriate, but it tackled a lot of different adult subjects. And also, the biggest reason I feel why it is a classic is that soundtrack. Ooh, that soundtrack. Now, I know I said something about Revolutionary Girl Utena having a good soundtrack, but I'm noticing that a lot of different anime across the board have some amazing soundtracks. This one, Cowboy Bebop's, was, I would say, primarily jazz, but there's a little blues in there, a little heavy metal. There's like even a little what sounds like tribal music in there. And the soundtrack was composed by a lady. She's very famous for good anime music. She's a composer named Yoko Kanno. Yeah. That soundtrack, I went and bought a couple of songs off of it, and a lot of them are performed by the band called the Seatbelts. I believe that is their name. Look them up. I would definitely recommend this show to anybody also starting out watching anime, and even if you didn't, if you like shows that don't have happy endings, if you like darker themed shows, if you like shows about outer space, if you like shows about philosophy, like it has so many different facets that would draw somebody in, which is why I would recommend it. I hated that at the end Spike went out the way that he did, but I respected his choice. Like Jet respected his choice as well. And all in all, it was a great show.